Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Maggie.
My name is Brian.
And today we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Wendy Wen, and she is the co-founder and COO of Senreve, a luxury handbag company that marries beauty with versatility. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. Wendy, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? We want to learn about how you became the person that you are today.
It's a really deep question.
Sorry.
I was born in China, in Chengdu, actually. My parents were both scientists. My dad was a molecular biologist, and my mom, radiology oncologist.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very scientific family. And I moved to the U.S. when I was 4.5 because my dad was pursuing his PhD at USC. So very academic, science, biology-driven family. Like my grandparents were all academics in the biology field. My grandma was like a doctor. And so they obviously encouraged me to pursue medicine. And their rationale was, number one, you make a lot of money, and number two, it's a stable job. You're always going to need doctors, right? No matter what the economy. That was like their logic. And so I grew up in Southern California after moving there when I was 4.5. And then my parents had a second child, my brother. He's 8 years younger than me. We're really close. And then my grandparents moved from China to live with us. Like we were a big family with sometimes 4 sets of grandparents all under one roof. Sometimes they would move around and live with my aunts. But it was a really lovely childhood. I think one thing that stood out to me growing up was my parents didn't have very much, but they were very conscious of giving me every opportunity I had. Like any money they had, they allowed me to go to piano lessons, ballet lessons, any interests I evinced, they would try to maximize and fulfill. So really fortunate and blessed in that regard. And I think my journey to entrepreneurship is very circuitous. I would say earlier on, my initial goal was just to make a lot of money. I remember because my parents were poor, as a PhD student, my dad was making maybe $30,000 to $40,000 a year. My mom was helping doing protein science at the lab at USC, so also making $30,000 to $40,000. Then my dad became an associate professor, and it's not like a high paying job. My mom now does protein science work at Amgen. She never got her medical license in the US because she didn't have time. She was also taking care of me. And so short story is finances were always very, very tight in my family growing up. I remember as a little girl, I wanted a little teddy bear at Mervyn's. Mervyn's now is out of business. And my mom said, it's $16. It's way too expensive. Sorry, we can't afford it. And I just remember thinking, man, I wish I had money. I wish I had unlimited money. And my mom would say, hey, if you want a lot of money, study hard, go to a top school here in the US, and you'll be able to make a lot of money. So that was my framework. I always thought, okay, I just got to go to school and make a lot of money. And that path actually led me to a place where I was deeply unhappy. So, okay, that was the starting driver. And then, as I studied and did well at school, I started to feed my identity with this view that I needed to have external accolades to prove that I was smart or high achieving. I needed to have the highest score on a test. I needed to get into the best college. I needed to get the best job. I started to require external accolades to show to myself that I was good. Originally it was a path to get into college to make money, but then soon as I was growing up, it became part of my ego. It's I am a good person if I am considered smart and high achieving.
Mm-hmm.
So that fueled me, right? That kind of insecurity and need to feed my ego really fueled me. I ended up going to MIT, was initially studying medicine, brain and cognitive sciences, going down that path of like being a doctor to make money. But then I quickly discovered that if you want to make money, you should go into finance. Being a doctor is actually not the quickest way to make a buck. And so I switched my major to business. And actually, I remember thinking I was such like an extrovert as well growing up that being stuck in a lab doing research was just not going to maximize my extroverted tendencies, and business would actually utilize my interpersonal skills a lot more. So I was excited about pursuing finance and business. Ended up working in investment banking and was absolutely miserable. I think that experience taught me that chasing after money doesn't actually make you happy. So this is sort of like part of that journey, right? So I realized very quickly that I would much rather have like a few less, zeros in my like bank account and like weekends off and autonomy and work that had purpose. And so kind of once I realized that, I knew I needed to make a pivot. And I always wanted to go to business school. I remember thinking when I was younger that you need a higher, this probably came from my father, you need a higher graduate degree no matter what you do. I think it's because he's a PhD and they're all doctors. He's like, well, business, you need to get an MBA. So I think even as a little girl, I always thought, okay, no matter what I did, I wanted a graduate degree. And business school seemed perfect. It was like 2 years for you to just figure out what you really wanted to do. So I ended up doing 2 years of investment banking. And because in banking, you recruit so quickly for private equity, I ended up doing 2 more years of private equity. So I did banking at Blackstone, private equity at TPG. And in this whole time, I was just thinking, I need to figure out what I really want to do with my life. And I had this hypothesis that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because it sounded fun, right? You get to be your own boss, you can run your own business, you can create something. But truthfully, I was very insecure about my ability to do it. I had all these doubts. I actually wrote my Stanford GSB essay about wanting to start an e-commerce company in the fashion space. And I didn't believe it. I remember writing it thinking like, this is a dream. This is ideally what I would love to do, but I don't think I'm cut out for that. I'm not risk seeking enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm not strong enough. Like, I don't know how to be a leader. Like I had all these like self-doubt in my mind. But it helped me get into Stanford. So I got in. So I spent 2 years trying to kind of figure out what I really want to do with my life. And during the time I was in finance, I realized quickly that I didn't love investing because in my free time, instead of reading the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, I was online shopping. I was reading Purse Blog. I was going on Gilt every day at noon to see what deals I could buy. I was planning out my next designer, luxury purchase. And I think another thing I was always very passionate about, especially working in finance, was just female empowerment and feminism. Because I, as a minority female working in an industry that's predominantly white male, I felt inherent biases against just women in general. I saw mentors who were women kind of quit after they have babies just because their work-life balance did not sort of encourage like family, right? And so at Stanford, during my 2 years, I said to myself, I'm going to spend 2 years to really figure out what I want to do. And I want to explore, number one, feminism and female empowerment. Number two, retail and fashion. And then number three, entrepreneurship. So I, even though I wasn't confident enough to be an entrepreneur, I was very curious. So I did a lot of what you guys are doing now, which is talk to different entrepreneurs. I took classes where entrepreneurs would come and tell us about their journey. I took a class that was like an incubator class called Lean Launchpad, where you start with an idea and a team, and you have to like make a minimal viable product by the end of the course. I kind of break down the steps of starting a company step by step. So that kind of scratched my entrepreneurial itch. And actually that experience helped me realize, oh my gosh, there's actually not a big difference between me and other successful entrepreneurs. And by the way, success shouldn't be defined by external accolades. You can define it yourself. There's a lot of different definitions of success for entrepreneurship. I used to think that a successful entrepreneur looked like Mark Zuckerberg, somebody who had been coding in his basement since he was 5.
Yeah.
And his success is like a multi-billion-dollar super unicorn. That's actually not the case. So at Stanford, I encountered many entrepreneurs who had varying levels of success, and they defined it themselves. I was incredibly inspired by this one woman who started this flex work network, kind of like Upwork, but for women who were stay-at-home moms. Mm-hmm. And she didn't raise any VC money. It was bootstrapped. She generates, $300,000-$400,000 of cash every year for herself. And I'm like, that's a really great type of success. And so I ended up realizing quickly that I could be an entrepreneur too. So that's 1. 2, fashion. So I was part of Retail Club, and we led these trips to Paris and Milan to visit the C-level executives at Chanel, Hermes, Prada, Louis Vuitton. And I just loved that whole experience. I ended up getting an internship at Chanel in between my first and second year of business school. And through that experience, I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, I learned a lot about branding and how these brands have been able to stay so relevant despite being so old. And then number 2, I just learned how much opportunity there was because they were so scared of digital, and so scared to move and change and innovate. And also they don't have to. That's another interesting thing about luxury is they can stay exactly the way they are and people will still buy them because of the brand. So I was like, this is interesting. There's a lot of opportunity because luxury incumbents are not yet sort of grasping onto the power of digital and how consumer needs are evolving. And then the last piece, feminism, I was the co-president of Women in Management. I just did I did this too. I interviewed various women who were in leadership positions, and they inspired me to kind of take the leap of faith and do something bold. So when I was graduating from the GSB, I started talking to my co-founder, Coral. She's actually a GSB alum who we had connected through mutual friends. And I was like, I don't want to get a job. It just doesn't feel right. There's no job out there that's that exciting for me. She's like, I have this idea to start a handbag company. Do you want to join me? And I jumped at that opportunity because I kind of, everything I just told you, right? I was already doing retail, club exploration. I loved, I love the idea of trying something new. And I think going through the Stanford experience and seeing other entrepreneurs, helped me get over my fears and insecurities in myself. And so ended up starting Senreve with Coral started working on it at the end of 2015, October 2015. I graduated in June 2015, started working on it full-time October 2015, and then we launched the company in November 2016. I just rambled on for a long time.
Wow, no, that was amazing. I feel like you kind of just provided a film or a movie of your life, which is really insightful.
Yeah, it's extremely insightful to realize your upbringing, what you currently value, and that relates a lot to myself at least. Just growing up without much money, and then for me getting into real estate because I actually wanted to make a lot of money, and when you did, it wasn't that exciting anymore. And I don't want to sound condescending in any way, but once you hit financial freedom, you're just like, okay, what else is there? What else am I capable of doing? You start asking yourself these questions, that only you can answer. Only you can make yourself happy. So what makes you happy?
Totally.
And I can kind of see that in your journey already. I think for you, it's things that you're. I feel like with you, it's your motivation comes from your own insecurity in a way.
Yep.
Where you feel like maybe I'm not good enough to do this. So I'm kind of curious, but at the same time, you have so much accolades to back up what you want to do. You're like, hey, like I've been a really good student. I've been in investment banking. I got the best jobs out there. Why can't I compete with the best? You know, I think that's the mentality that separates you from the rest. It's like once you realize that these people that you look up to are just like you and they're no smarter than you, that's when your mindset starts switching and you can start to compete with them. You know, that's when things open up. And it's crazy when that happens too, because when you open up your subconscious mind, you are able to spot opportunities out there that you didn't see before, because now you know yourself a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, and I really admire that story that you just told. One thing I'm curious about too is, you know, you went to great schools, you got a great job, you made a lot of money, and then to have that conversation with your parents and be like, hey, I'm not happy right now. You know, what was that conversation like, and how did you talk to them into supporting you into like being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question too. And I'm curious because then your parents are in medicine and you were going to go that route too, right? And so I'm sure they had some influence to you for you to go to that route. But, you know, obviously medicine, you felt like it wasn't for yourself and you switched to finance and investment banking. You know, what was their, you know, whole perception of that? And then for you to go from investment banking to entrepreneurship, you know, and it's very tied to, you know, Asian culture. A lot of Asian parents want us to become doctors or go to the medicine route or, you know, become lawyers or something very safe, you know, because a lot of them immigrated here. They just want us to have a bright future, have a safe job, you know, be very stable. But yeah, I'm very curious, you know, how did they take that?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there was the point when I called my dad as a sophomore in college and said, hey dad, I'm not going to be pre-med anymore. I'm switching over into finance. And I gave him my reasoning. I said, you told me that doctors make money. Well, I found that they don't make that much money. You make more money in investment banking. Reason number one. Reason number two, I was like, I did this summer internship at Amgen where my mom worked, and I did lab work, and I was like, I was just so bored. I was so bored because it's a lot of being an academic and a research and science requires a lot of patience, a lot of curiosity. You're kind of putting together an experiment, pipetting things. It has to be perfect. I was also really bad at that, at shaking hands. And then you wait 4 hours for it to incubate, and then you check the results, and then sometimes the results are terrible, and you're like, I don't know if it's because my pipetting was bad or we're not looking at the right part of the experiment. And so it just wasn't for me. And I explained that to him, and he paused. And then he said, you know what? You should do what you love. And I think you're really capable and you'll be successful, whatever you do. I just won't be able to help you. He's like, you know, I'm an immigrant. I don't know much about this country. The only thing I do know is science. The only thing we know is science and medicine and biology. And before we could help you, but now we can't help you. I'm like, that's my dad. We'll be fine. They were very supportive. I would say overall, I'm very lucky in that my parents gave me a lot of trust. And they trusted my judgment. They trusted my decision making. Maybe because I'm the oldest. It's definitely not the same with my younger brother. My parents were way more tiger parenty to him. But I was also more self-motivated because I think I was the immigrant child. I came from China. I understood the need to kind of fend for myself. So that was the first touch point. And the second one, when I had decided to start a company after graduating from the GSV instead of going back into finance. I had plenty of offers to go back into private equity. They were also very understanding. Like my dad was very supportive. My mom and dad were just like, okay, yeah, cool. I mean, it sounds hard, but go for it. And he actually admitted to me like a couple weeks ago that he had for sure thought that I was just going to work on it for like a few months and then stop, or that I was going to struggle along for many, many years before I saw success, and that he's been very surprised by how quickly Senreve has grown. So I would say my parents have been pretty good about both of those transitions, and I think it's because they really trusted me as the older child. Now, my Chinese extended family, it's so funny because when I go back to China and visit them, I remember like my great uncle and my grandfather's brother, just like pulled me aside and was just so concerned. He's like, Wendy, you went to MIT and now you're peddling handbags? Isn't that such a big waste?
Oh.
And I was just like, oh, I didn't even know what to say. I just laughed. I was like, oh, okay, I'm having fun. And he was just like, I'm so concerned. Such a waste. I think in their minds, I have a like marketplace shop or something where I'm like selling handbags.
I think so too. Yeah. I like how you said that your father said he was very surprised. And I think that is like the Asian parents' way of saying that they're very proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
But they just won't say that because they don't show emotion.
Yeah, they don't go as far as saying that, but he does. He like shares our articles all over WeChat. They're very active on WeChat, and he did say, he's like, yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think the biggest thing with Asian parents is that you have to show that you're dependable, you're you're trustworthy, that whatever choices that you make, you know, parents are always, especially Asian parents, always steer you down the path of being safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for them, being safe is everything. That's their version of success, as you defined earlier, you know.
And I think it was for me too, and that's why I have to admit I was kind of a brand whore. You know, I was like trying to get the right school names on my resume, trying to get the right like investment banks and private equity firms, and it finally, I think I got to a point where I'm like, oh, I've collected enough of these resume builders. Like I should feel confident enough now to take a leap of faith. And even if I fail at this point, I have enough of like a cushion on my resume to help me find another job. But I remember thinking pursuing that external set of validation made me deeply unhappy. Like I was deeply, deeply unhappy when I was working in private equity because I was constantly comparing myself to other people. I was comparing myself to another analyst who might have gotten a higher rating. I'm comparing myself to another friend who, you know, already has another like really high paying hedge fund or private equity job lined up. There was always another mountain or another peak that might be higher than mine. And by having an external kind of pillar of success made my day-to-day really unhappy because I just never felt like it was enough. And even now, I think sometimes I have to stop myself and not compare Senreve to other companies, but in a grander scheme, it's harder to compare, right? Because every company is so different. I'm carving out my own path and try to remind myself today, every single day, that I myself am good enough already. I don't have to prove it to anyone. And doing this and building Senreve is because of this incredible journey that I get to go on, right? Like there are 3 reasons why people start companies. 1 is to make a ton of money. 2 is to build a great company. 3 is to change the world. And for me, the one that I weigh myself the most heavily on is building something. I really like thinking about building the team, building a product that didn't exist before, building the culture, expanding that, building a marketing footprint, building our brand. And so I try to focus on that and like thinking about how I am bettering myself through this journey of building rather than focusing on our revenue or, you know, fundraise rounds, etc. It's hard. It's super hard. I mean, I still catch myself falling into like anxiety and insecurity and like fear. A lot of fear and stress comes from that, but I'm more aware of it now. Now that
I think you do bring up a really good point too. I think that there's so much about mental health that Asian cultures never really talk about. You know, the fact that you felt anxiety, you felt insecure, you felt like you weren't good enough. You know, all this really stems back to somewhat of how we were raised, you know, our own upbringing too. And you know, I kind of want to deviate this conversation and talk a little more about mental health. You know, I feel like for most entrepreneurs, people look at your success as, you know, monetary things, like how many nice things can you own, how big is your house, and how nice is your car. But I think the one thing that people, especially Asian entrepreneurs, kind of neglect is mental health. You know, like, you know, when you're facing enormous stress like this and making really tough decisions almost on a daily basis, you know, we can only imagine like all the random decisions that you make a split second on a daily basis. How do you deal with this amount of stress, and how do you keep yourself going and motivated every single day?
Yeah. And going back to, when you were feeling like you couldn't start your own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You weren't that type of person, or it just wasn't the right fit lifestyle for you. But then you shifted, when you started, seeing all of these characteristics that you have, you notice that maybe I do have this entrepreneurial spirit inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to make that shift too? Because that ties back to your mental health as well, right?
Exactly. And that's something we really want to highlight right now too.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're doing anything in life, you always get compared to your brother and sister, your cousin, your family, your friend, whatnot. The list goes on. We just want to make sure that we can leverage your story to really inspire others to follow down the same path.
Yeah.
So to answer your first question around my mental health and how I take care of that, I think it's definitely a journey. I think I've gotten better at it over the years. But my darkest point, I was literally not sleeping. I would go 48 hours without sleep. Like I could not fall asleep. The moment I lay in bed, I would be so tired during the day, and then the moment I'm in bed, I'm like wide awake and tense and stressed. And then I start worrying about not sleeping, and then I'm just up all night. So I definitely struggled a lot from an insomnia perspective. But I quickly took action to try to fix it. And I think number one is getting therapy, getting coaching. So I definitely seek out those types of professional services. And I find them to be incredibly helpful. Like I have a regular coach that I talk to, a regular therapist. I leaned on my husband a little bit, but it also created tension in our marriage. He shouldn't be filling that role of a therapist. So we started getting a marriage counselor. Like I have a whole team. I have an acupuncturist who does like massage for me. So I definitely invested in service providers to help me get to a better place. Oh, I even worked with a sleep hypnotherapist.
Wow.
He would hypnotize me and then do therapy on me.
Yeah.
So now my sleep is in a much better place. I think it's a combination of like having those service providers, and also I think for me it's been really important to, number one, exercise, and number two, meditate. So now I read Atomic Habits, and I thought that book changed my life. It's all about
that book.
I love it. Yeah, all these little things. I have a little habits tracker. All these little things added up just makes you a lot better. And so I really make sure I carve out time for exercise and for meditation, and obviously sleep. Like sleep is so, so critical. When I don't sleep, I tend to be more pessimistic and more depressed. But mindset-wise, I think the thing that I am forcing myself to constantly remind myself about is that this is just a job. Like Senreve is still just a job. Right. It's not my identity. It's not my ego. It's not a measurement of how good I am. And if this job and this project doesn't work out, I can always get another job. Literally get another job or start another project. And so having that level of kind of objectivity is also incredibly helpful. And then a way I triage is I always ask myself, if a problem comes up, number one, is someone going to die? Number two, is the company going to die because of this? Number three, is this really important for me to handle right now? And number four, like, who can I delegate it to? So I kind of triage everything that way, and that's also really helpful. Like when coronavirus first hit, it's very stressful, right? But I'm safe, I'm healthy, no one in my family is going to die. The company's not going to die either. Yeah, our sales is not going to grow as much this year as last year. It's not going to kill us. And then it's just a matter of figuring out how to triage our strategy and pivot in life.
Yeah. I love that. I love how open you are about, talking about therapy and like marriage counseling. I feel like in a lot of areas, people have like this bad connotation, like, oh, I don't need a therapist. I don't need a life coach. Like I got everything on my own. And people have that ego, and there was actually a post in AHN. Someone had admitted that they don't feel like they have that entrepreneurial spirit. And, how do you actually go about that, and how do you overcome that, right? And a lot of people recommended see a therapist. There are strengths within you. Everyone has their own strengths. Everyone has their own weaknesses. And for you to realize your strength, that's the power, and for you to see a therapist, that actually shows strength, because you want to improve on yourself, right? You actually want to get to a better place, whether that be, yourself or your significant other. That shows a lot of strength.
And that's your own sense of awareness too.
Yeah.
You are fully aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at. And you got in such I would say, an entrepreneurial mindset that if you can delegate these things away, even if it's like meditation or therapy or coaching and whatnot, you will do it, because that's the best use of your time. And I can see that from an entrepreneur perspective, Yeah, yeah, we have the same compartments throughout our day to exact same list. What can we delegate? What can we do? We need to answer it right now.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. Your sense of awareness is great. We can kind of tell already that, even though you keep saying like, hey, look, I'm going to have a plan B, a plan C, you're not going to need that.
Yeah.
The greatest successful people that we talk to on the podcast are people like yourself with a great sense of awareness. They know when to push, when to take a step back, when to delegate. Because if you don't know these things, you're going to fail so hard, because one person can't handle everything.
Yeah. Let me be clear. I'm not good at it. I'm still learning. I'm terrible at,
We're all learning.
We're all learning together.
And I didn't have the best managerial idols to look up to, because finance, everybody's a micromanager. So I am far from being good at delegating and being a great leader and being a great manager, but I see that as a challenge, right? I see that as, this is a really important skill to develop as part of life. And whatever I do next, this is really important. So I'm going to figure out ways to be better at triaging, delegating, letting go.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, we're all here to learn together.
Yeah.
And like you said before, there's really no one out there, especially within the Asian community, to even look up to hear stuff like this. The fact you're so open and talking about it, people are going to look up to you. You want to hear these things,
I mean, I remember listening to a lot of entrepreneurs, because like I'd mentioned, I was inspired by listening to entrepreneurs, and the thing that really made me feel insecure was hearing all of them say that they don't sleep.
Oh, wow.
Not sleeping.
It's so common.
I listened to this Tory Burch interview, and she said she sleeps 4 to 5 hours a night. And I'm like, I can't be an entrepreneur. I need 7 hours. I do. If I get less than 7, I just can't function. I can do a few nights of less than 7, but consistently it would destroy me. But so I'm like, I wish more entrepreneurs talked about how much they value sleep and how much they need sleep, because I do. And so now I'm like, I need to talk about that. And people don't really talk about how hard entrepreneurship is.
Yeah, they don't. It's extremely difficult, And we kind of want to pivot more towards your entrepreneur journey into how's the money raising process for Senreve like?
Yeah.
What kind of hurdles did you face? Did you face a lot of discrimination, racism as you're raising money?
Yeah, and I know that you guys you and Coral went through a Series A funding.
Congratulations, by the way.
Congratulations. And there's this whole story about, it being led by Sonia Brown at Norwest Venture Partners. And I know that there was this underlying reason because, they are about women entrepreneurship, women empowerment, and she's a woman herself. Talk a little bit about, that experience and why you wanted to partner with this individual specifically.
And women in female empowerment.
Yeah.
I mean, let me, again, be honest. It's a brutal game, fundraising. I think we emailed or reached out and talked to 31 different firms and got rejected 28 times. So we had only 3 term sheets at the end.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I think it's very serendipitous who ends up working out and who doesn't. I think with us, there was no overt discrimination that I felt, but the things that I heard again and again would be oh, my wife didn't like your bag, so we're gonna pass. We had an investor who was really intrigued by our pitch and our numbers and our traction, And then his wife went and bought one of our bags and was like, I don't like it. And then he passed, you know? So it's kind of like, she's one person, one data point, and you're going to let your wife speak for all of women. You know, like it's such a big market, right? Like you can't just trust. I think that the challenge isn't so much over discrimination. It's more that with investors, a lot of times they need to have a gut instinct about a business, especially at the Series A stage, right? When it's still really young. And when the investor himself is not a target customer and can't understand the value proposition of the end product, it's really hard for them to have that natural gut instinct.
Yeah, yeah. Because most of the time it's like emotion based.
It's very emotion based at this stage.
Very emotion. It's really emotion based, and I think what worked with Sonia and Catherine from Norwest, like Catherine's, she was the girl who sourced the deal, is that they kind of got it immediately. Even in our like initial pitches and conversations, they were just like throwing out ideas that were totally on point. They had looked at a lot of companies in the luxury space and the consumer space, so they just knew the business and they knew the space really well. Like for some of the previous investors who rejected us, they would ask me questions like, why would anyone spend over $1,000 online on a bag? That's crazy, you know? Checked out Net-a-Porter. Like there are examples out there, and they just weren't familiar enough with it. And I think having this, you know, having Norwest who just understood and got it was really, really helpful in Sarah's. And I will say, like, I can't be happier with them as our partner. After our first board meeting, we all went, like me, Coral, my co-founder, Sonia, Catherine, we went to a bar across the street and then talked about our fertility journeys. Like,
oh wow,
your egg, like, Sonia, how many kids did you have? Oh my God, you had 4. What was that like? How was pregnancy? How was giving birth? Like, where do you see that in Silicon Valley? You know, where the board member and the entrepreneur goes and talks about fertility. So I'm really proud and grateful for the partners that we ended up with. But frankly, there weren't very many. There weren't very many female partners that we pitched. Most of them just happened to be male.
That's amazing.
And that's a huge lesson for everyone out there who is fundraising right now too. You know, a lot of us don't take rejection very well. And we think 1 or 2 rejections is like, oh, our idea is not validated, we're not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not true at all, because this is where it really tests your passion. How passionate are you about this idea, this product, to continue pushing? Because when you go out there and fundraise money, typically you want to have people invest in you because they believe in you, not because you're profitable or anything like that. You know, you want them to believe in you. And the honest truth is, you only need one.
It's a dating game. You just need one. You just need one, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about their experience. You know. So we've had people pass because they're like, "Oh, I invested in a fashion company before and it did poorly, so I just stay away from fashion altogether." That is not a reflection of you or your business, because fashion companies are all created differently. Like, you can't assume one fashion company is the same as the next, but they are scarred by their experience, and so they're going to pass. So it's important to not take it personally and to just send out 10 more emails, you know? Get one rejection. Okay, great. Let me look at my network on LinkedIn. Who else do I know? Who else can I email?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's it. You know, all the articles about you and Coral getting Series A funding, those articles don't talk about how many times you guys have tried, you know, all the hard work that you guys put into it.
It's all about the glamour in these articles.
Yeah. People don't see the behind the scenes, you know, so it's very...
I talked to a lot of entrepreneur friends when I was getting advice for the fundraising process, and it's all the same story.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be like, I got 40 rejections, and the last one who happened to say yes was like Sequoia, or like, you know, like, so it's very serendipitous, and it's a numbers game. You just have to go out and pound the pavement and talk to everybody and be ready for rejection and grow and improve. Like, after every single pitch, we would write down all the questions they had asked us and then incorporate those questions into the pitch, so that the next pitch was even better, and the next pitch was even better. So every time we were going out, we were getting better and better.
That's great advice. So when you and Coral had started Senreve, I'm sure you had, some people talking about the market is too saturated, the handbag market is way too saturated. There's way too many brands. But, when Brian and I went to Senreve for the speaking panel a couple months ago, I saw the bags for my first time and I thought they were beautiful. They looked like the quality of Celine, but at a way more affordable price. And I feel like you guys really disrupted the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of like people saying stuff like that, like, oh, the market is way too saturated, you guys aren't really going to get anywhere with another handbag brand. How are you and Coral able to respond to those type of comments?
It's a very great question. We got that all the time. And our answer is that, the handbags, first of all, the handbag space is really big.
Mm-hmm.
It's a $50 billion global market and luxury handbags. And it's an expandable market. Handbag is a category, unlike Uber or Facebook, where it's not winner takes all. If you convince a woman that this brand or this product is desirable, she can add it to her collection. She can shop at Longchamp, Coach, Louis Vuitton, Chanel. She can own all of those brands. So the challenge is on you to develop your own unique value proposition and your own unique brand value such that a woman feels like she needs it. So that's point number one, that the market is unique in that it can be saturated and you can build $1 billion business if you're Coach. And you can also build $1 billion business if you're like Chanel or Hermes. Mm-hmm. Secondly, for us, we have a unique value proposition that we've identified, which is this gap in the market between something that is really beautiful, high-end, made in Italy, like the Celines and Fendis of the world, and something that you can actually work and use day to day, right? Like you can bring to work and can put a laptop in. Right now, women tend to have to make a trade-off between those two. So that was our initial differentiation.
Yeah.
There really wasn't something that kind of allowed you to have both. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to kind of get at that. And that is the pillar of our brand too. We're all about this woman, this modern woman who is not only a fashionista, but she might be a CEO, a mom. She's not boxed into one role in her life. She is a multifaceted woman. And our handbags and our products reflect that modern luxury shopper. And we think there's a lot of legs to this customer because her needs are changing so much compared to the traditional luxury brands. Mm-hmm. And the traditional luxury brands can't move fast enough to reach her needs. Her needs are, she needs versatility. She cares about brand and quality, but not logos. Right. She is traveling all the time. She cares about the mission and sustainability. She's omni-channel. She's not uniquely offline or uniquely online. She's everywhere. She discovers things through influencers and online magazines and Instagram, and not necessarily through Vogue and fashion runways. And for us, we have that unique insight about our customer, so we believe we can serve her better than some of the existing incumbents.
Yeah, I really like, what everything you just said so far, like the brand quality, like the mission of your product. It really reminds me of the early days of Rolexes and Nike. Even back then, Rolexes were considered for the everyday working man, and over time, it evolved into a luxury brand that you can't not have once you hit wealth, The same thing with Nike too. When they first came out, it was David versus Goliath against Adidas,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah, people can't imagine that. Yeah, people can't imagine that now. The Nike used to be so much smaller than Adidas, mm-hmm. and then Puma too. The Puma brothers and Nike brothers. Puma and Adidas were brothers in Germany. But Nike started competing, saying that they're creating an everyday product that for best performance uses, that cool everyday athlete uses our product. And that a lot reminds me of your product. Mm-hmm. And we're super excited to see where you'll be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And even
that is the best compliment you can pay me, because I loved Shoe Dog, that book.
Yes, that's my favorite book.
So good. It is very reminiscent of Senreve, and everything he talked about, I was oh my gosh, this totally resonates with me. And so, yeah, I feel if Nike could do it, we could do it,
Worth. You just have to believe and keep on innovating. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to keep on doing. Times always change. And even 5, 10 years, 20 years from now, people are going to forget that Senreve was started for this mission. Now they see it like the same caliber as like Coach and Celine and all the luxury brands, you know. It just takes time for us, for consumers to see it as a luxury. That's all it takes. And that kind of brings us back to the point, what kind of marketing strategy did you use to really get your brand out there?
So we had the insight that, well, first of all, it all comes from that customer, right? Who is our customer? How does she discover new brands? And we had done a ton of customer interviews in the very beginning, even before we started developing our products. So we knew that women like Celine. We knew they liked Givenchy. We knew that they were tired of like Louis Vuitton monograms. So we kind of incorporated all of that into our design. But with regards to how we, with regards to how we actually marketed it, we also thought about her discovery journey. How does she decide to spend, $1,000 on a new brand? And it's usually through word of mouth, people that she trusts. It might be through an online publication that she reads, like a Refinery 29 or, Goop, those types of publications. It might be through normal press, like New York Times, Wall Street Journal. It might be through celebrities and influencers that she herself looks up to as style icons. And so in the beginning, our challenge was to show up in these places where she seeks inspiration. And so we networked our way into getting our bags into the hands of celebrities and influencers for free. So we would network with their stylists and gift them product and just hope that they're seen out and about wearing it. And the challenge was to make sure the product was attractive enough on their own that these celebrities and influencers would wear it for free, and they did. That was great. And then it was networking. We were literally just selling our bags hand-to-hand combat. Like we would do trunk shows and get people to come over to our house, and we would sell our bags from our house. We would do trunk shows with our investors. Like it was literally hustling in the beginning. But we were able to get our bags purchased by partners at Goldman, partners at McKinsey, partners at Bain, partners at law firms, C-level executives at tech firms like Lynn Jurek, who is the CEO and founder of Sunrun, carried our bag in this magazine interview that she had done. And so these women were our early adopters and started influencing women within their organization. So there are actually private equity firms where like all the female deal professionals carry a Senreve bag because the partner wore a bag. And so that was like the word of mouth. And then we made sure to pitch all of this sort of early success to PR and to get into those articles that I was telling you about. And once we kind of build that foundation of brand, such that if somebody searches Senreve on Google, they'll see proof points. Right. That's kind of how you kind of build a brand. It's like other people talking about you, you're not talking about you. Only until we had that foundation did we start turning on paid Facebook and Google ads.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I've seen Senreve blow up in the last couple of years, and I keep seeing it on my Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere, and that's so true. Like if I see a celebrity that I admire or a role model who's wearing that brand or that handbag, that's like automatic, like, oh, I need to get that.
Right. I can relate to this part of the conversation. Just kidding.
So we know that you have a flagship store in San Francisco, and we were there too. What was that experience like opening that store with Coral? And were you kind of like honed in on San Francisco? Were you thinking of other locations?
I also want to ask one more follow-up question too. Like, how is it working with Coral too?
Yeah.
How do you guys solve the problems? But you can answer Maggie's questions first, and then.
Yeah. So the store opening was an evolution. We actually started off working completely remotely, like when we were just three people, it was like me, Coral, and one first employee. We would work from our apartments, from cafes, and then we got to a certain size. I think we were like 6 people where we're like, okay, we should probably get an office. If we're gonna get an office, we might as well allow customers to come and see and feel and touch the bag. So our first office/showroom was actually in Union Square on the 4th floor on top of Hermes. It was like a sublet space that we converted into a nice showroom, and we had a conference room that we used as an office to work out of. And the reason for that is, well, we needed a place to work, and we might as well make some money out of it. So we actually would make, 10 times our rent per month just from the sales from that office.
That's awesome.
That's how we were thinking about subsidizing the rent. And then we got to a certain size where we were outgrowing that office, and that's why we opened the flagship store on 441 Jackson Street. And it was a similar mentality. We actually work from out of the back. The back of it is an office for our team. In front of it is a store. And again, we come from this omni-channel perspective where we expect our customers to want to have offline touch points, right? Like it's important for them to do their research online, see some influencers with it, but they sometimes do want to see, feel, and touch, and that's the point of conversion. And so that was like a big reason why we decided to invest in a flagship, like floor level store. It's because we believe that this would help with our conversion, in which it absolutely has. And it gives us this opportunity to build a community. We can hold events like the one you attended. We can, do collaborations with other influencers and other brands. It's a great way to build community. And the reason we're in San Francisco is because we actually believe that having that tech and innovative DNA sets us apart from the companies that are in New York and LA. And we think of ourselves as wanting to be like the Nikes or like the Teslas and Apples of fashion, right? The way Apple brought design to the world of consumer electronics, we want to bring technology and versatility and function to the world of high-end fashion design. And there's no better place for that kind of entrepreneurial spirit than Silicon Valley. And then to answer your question about co-founder relationship, I mean, from the very beginning, I think it was really important for Coral and I to vet each other. And I have to thank her for inviting me to join her as her co-founder. And she told me that for her, the most important 3 things she looked at were number 1, chemistry, number 2, trust, and number 3, vision. So chemistry is just intangible. Either you work well together or you don't. Either you're synergistic and your energies are, great for each other, or you're not. And we happen to have a really incredible work chemistry. And trust is like deeper than just a level of like integrity. It's more that, do you trust the other person to speak on behalf of the company when you're not in the room? Do you trust the other person to just have a natural instinct for the right decision? And she felt like I had that. And then number 3, vision. It's like, do we both believe in the same long-term vision for Senreve? Which we do. And the long-term vision is we want to be that next generation luxury brand that is much bigger than just, handbags, that marries versatility with design. So we want that vein to kind of spread across all different categories, just starting with handbags.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you mentioned about working with a co-founder is it's difficult. Essentially you are dating another person.
Yeah.
And the worst is with entrepreneurship to be pretty ugly.
And they're common too.
We definitely have disagreements. I mean, we have disagreements and arguments all the time. And sometimes we hash it out in front of our team and they get really nervous because we sound very contentious. But I think what's really great about me and Coral is we're both so like logical, and so we don't take anything personally. Like we can yell at each other and hash out a disagreement, and then we'll be able to like go right back and focus on the vision. We're both very much like, we're both trying to work towards the same vision. Yeah. And so we might have different perspectives, and it's important to hash out those perspectives such as we come to a better decision.
Yeah. I think that's a really good approach to solving problems too. I think that whereas when corporate, if you kind of have that, behavior is considered unprofessional. But I think that's not the most, I don't think that's the best way to solve your problems. You're highly professional. That means that a lot of stuff gets swept under the rug. Nothing really gets done. The problems that you have is like, I hate talking blah, blah, and then it gets swept under the rug.
Yeah.
I feel like the way that you structure it is the culture is very transparent. It's very safe to express disagreements, because disagreements are the things that kind of help you grow as a business too. You need to have these, I don't want to say often, but you need to have them. If you don't talk about it, you're never going to fix anything.
Yeah.
And I like the culture that you guys built already. It's being transparent, and safe to express your opinions. The danger.
It's important Yeah, it's super, super important. People on my team change my mind all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will echo what Brian said. I think in corporate, it's like, it's so easy to like not speak up because it's like, oh, the executives will take care of it. You know, like I'm just not going to say anything if people are going to argue with me. And if you're an entrepreneur, you obviously, if it's your product and you have passion for it, it's your baby. Like, of course you're going to speak up, you know?
It kind of reminds me of Ray Dalio. The way that he structured his company is that if everyone's too polite and you have something wrong, you know, he makes sure is that everyone has an opportunity to criticize him in his business to improve. And I think that it's really important to do something like that, and that's how you're going to improve. You have to listen to the ugly things you don't like that hurt your self-esteem, and that's okay because your team is right there to pick you back up and do it again. Yeah,
but those arguments are always short-term. You know, you have to think about the long-term vision, and it seems like you and Coral are on the same page with that. So that's really inspiring.
Yeah. Do you have any tips and advice for entrepreneurs right now, especially Asian entrepreneurs and female Asian entrepreneurs that want to get started, that feel the same way you do? What kind of advice would you give to them and essentially yourself when you first started?
I think in the beginning, I had a lot of doubts, and I had Coral to thank for pulling me out. She's very confident, and I always have to try to adopt some of her confidence. And something that I would tell a female woman or female Asian female is you tend to underestimate yourself versus a guy would tend to overestimate himself. So you need to adjust your mental barometer to be slightly more arrogant, and then you'll be normal. So like, that's something I see with my husband all the time. He always overestimates his capabilities, and he calls out that he thinks I always underestimate my capabilities or my achievements. And I think that's just something women struggle with in general. It's we're naturally more focused on what we are doing wrong or what we could be doing better or the downside scenario, and not focusing on that 1% chance that it can be knocked out into the ballpark. And I remember Coral saying to me, she was like, just imagine, like, if somebody else could do it, why can't we? You know, you should be confident enough in your ability that we are the ones to kind of make this potential come true. She was like, if you agree that it's possible for this next generation luxury brand to exist, let's agree that that's possible, right? It's hard to say that it's impossible. It's happened all over the decades with other categories, right? Like Nike. And I was like, yeah, it's possible. She's like, okay, if it's possible, what makes you think that you can't be the person to make this possibility into a reality? And I think it's helpful to have that framework. So just always just make sure you're not like doubting yourself unnecessarily, I would say.
Telling yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
And then two, I think another thing I would tell my younger self is that every problem is surmountable if you have time to figure it out. So it's just a matter of making sure you have time, meaning either you have enough cash runway or, you know, you're able to fundraise. But for example, if you fail with the first set of products, you could fold and the company can go under, or you can pivot and find another set of products. Maybe handbags didn't work. Maybe we should go into beauty or skincare. Like, there's always a possibility of being successful if you don't give up and if you don't run out of money. So success is, I think Vince Lombardi once said, I never lost a game. Sometimes I just ran out of time. That applies to entrepreneurship too. You only fail if you give up.
Absolutely agree with that statement. You know, there's so many times in entrepreneurship where you just want to give up. We're like, oh man, nothing's going right. There's no like light at the end of the tunnel. But somehow you keep sticking with it. There's always some sort of light that comes through. You're like, okay, what is that thinking? You know? Right.
Yeah. And there's going to be a million of those barriers.
Yeah.
A million of those things where you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But if you look hard enough and if you're creative, you can find a little sliver of light and just work towards that little sliver of light until it becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
100%.
That's beautiful advice. And I really appreciate your advice about women empowerment and women entrepreneurship. I do believe, you know, there are a lot of industries that are dominated by men. But
every single
industry, no matter what it is. It could be like fashion too, or like makeup. It could be anything. But we are just as capable, if not more. And it's all about your mindset.
And we love hearing from you too, because we are about women empowerment in the Asian Hustle Network. And that has been our priority and our goal. And we stated it over and over, like LA Times and whatnot. Like, we want to empower Asian women to succeed.
Yeah. That's why it's so great to have you on to the AHN podcast. Wendy, so we are at the top of the hour. We would love to know where we can find out more about you and how our members can find out more about you.
You can follow me at Senreve or at _Wendy_Wen on Instagram. And you can always go on our website. You can email us on our website, senreve.com. That's SENREVE. Oh, the name Senreve means sense and dream in French, because we're sensible and dreamy. We're like beautiful and functional. We're marrying traditional craftsmanship with innovative design and functionality.
I love it. The bags are beautiful.
Well, Maggie's birthday is coming up, so I guess I have a gift.
Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast, Wendy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.